Good evening, everyone. It'll be a few moments while we get all of our technology synced and everyone who is whatever choice of platform they're using is able to see it. We are excited that you are here with us this evening. Just a few housekeeping things. If you have questions, please only use the Q&A function, not the chat if you are on Zoom. So please only use the Q&A function and not the chat if you are utilizing Zoom. Good evening, everyone. Again, welcome to Career Pathways to Diversity in Healthcare, Empowering New Voices for an Inclusive Future. I am Audrey Lane. I'll be your moderator this evening. I'm the founding partner and executive director for E3 Foundation. We will begin with prayer, and then we will go into our discussion this evening, and I'll provide introductions of our esteemed panelists, who I would like to note are all women, yet again. And we're excited to have them join us. And then we'll have a presentation by Celeste Granger around a talent demand study and why this work is so important at this time. So if you would join me in a word of prayer. God, we thank you for this day. We thank you for life, health, and strength. We thank you for the opportunity to come together this evening to be able to witness about who you are and also to share good news with our community. We do not take it lightly that we've been given this privilege. We thank you for everything that you've done for us. We ask that you just be in the midst right now. We ask that you bless our technology, that it will work, that we will remain connected to all of our listeners and viewers this evening. We ask that the information that we share be uplifting and also informative for all of that are in attendance. We ask all these things in your son, Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right, so let's get going. I'm excited because we've been behind the scenes working on the Low Country Careers Collaborative for several months, and all of these ladies are in partnership with us and been extraordinary team members. So I'm excited to introduce them to you right now. So let's start with Ms. Renee Linyard-Gary. She is the Director of Diversity, Inclusion, and Health Equity with Roper St. Francis Healthcare Systems. And she oversees various diversity and inclusion programming within the Roper community and its community health departments, including the Access Health Tri-County Network, Ryan White Wellness Center, Greer Transitions Clinic, and Senior Services. She has over 20 years of experience in healthcare with roles in health administration, retail pharmacy, and community health. She's received many awards, including the Business Journal's 2023 Low Country Diversity Leadership Award. Congratulations, Renee. I didn't realize that. She is a servant leader with service on various boards and councils. And most recently, she serves on the African American Leadership Council and is mentor for the College of Charleston MBA program. She's a native of Mount Pleasant and lives in Moncks Corner. She holds a Bachelor of Arts in Business Administration and an MBA, both from Charleston Southern University. Welcome, Renee. Celeste Granger is the Associate Vice President of Talent and Program Officer for the Low Country Careers Collaborative at the Charleston Metro Chamber of Commerce. In this capacity, she works towards fostering equitable economic prosperity through workforce, talent, and education initiatives. Previously, Celeste served as the Director of Talent Initiatives for the Chamber to address member needs in talent and understanding the workforce ecosystem within the region. Prior to working at the Chamber, Celeste worked in adult education. She has over 15 years experience in higher ed within the areas of academic advising, living, learning, communities, leadership instruction, career services, conduct, and Title IX hearing officer, and federal TRIO grant programs. Celeste currently serves on the Development Advisory Board for the Zucker Family School of Education at the Citadel and on the Community Leaders Council for Tri-County Cradle to Career. She also has expertise in curriculum development, campus recruiting, and professional development training. She holds a BS in communications and a Master of Education in college student personnel administration. Please welcome Celeste Granger from the Chamber of Commerce. All right. And to the Royal community, this person is not a stranger to you, but I would like to welcome to the panel tonight, Felicia Vesey. She is the Director of Partnerships and Workforce Development for the E3 Foundation. Yay, I'm excited. Where she serves as a liaison to training and integrated wraparound service providers and tackles regional workforce and economic development challenges alongside employers and community leaders. Prior to joining E3, Felicia served as the Community Systems Director and COVID Response Operations Director with the Department of Health and Environmental Control, Low Country region, where she addressed health equity by improving systems involved in promoting health, reducing chronic diseases, and engaging the community. During the pandemic, she managed 50+ strategic community partnerships and significantly improved access to services in normally underserved areas. Felicia received numerous awards from the state, faith-based, and community organizations for her leadership, her service, and valuable contributions during the pandemic. She is a Charleston native and holds a BA in psychology with a minor in chemistry from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill and a Master of Health Administration from Tulane University. Welcome, Felicia Vesey. Thank you all for being with us this evening. So, Celeste, I would like to turn it over to you so that you can provide just a general overview of a talent demand study that the Chamber has done for our community.
Sure, I'm going to share my screen now. So give me 1 second. Okay, so the talent demand study is a piece that the Chamber puts out. We utilize this in order to forecast and kind of look at what jobs are going to be in demand over typically a 5-year period. We also look at potential shortages in jobs and any gaps in training or certifications. So, you know, a lot of our industry partners, a lot of our education partners utilize this information as we look to see what's kind of in the forecast for the Charleston region. And so I'm going to quickly go through just some of the key highlights from the study this year. Okay, so for the next 5 years, we're looking at a net increase of 35,700 jobs, and those are net new jobs. You know, from this study, we've already gone through 1 full year, and of those 35,700 new jobs, we've already created a little over 20,000 new jobs. So we are trending correctly in this aspect. So our forecasts are showing right. I wanted to pull out some of the top jobs, and we looked at them in different ways. This is just overall growth, the top 5 areas with overall growth. And some of the things that I want to point out is that with this spread, it has 5 different industry areas, which is good. That means we're not significantly short in any area, but healthcare practitioners is on this area of high needs. So that's one thing to kind of hold on to as we think about what we're presenting to you today. The next one is new jobs. So by new job growth, so those are created jobs, healthcare is still within 2 of the top 5 really areas, potentially 3, you know, depending on how the ecosystems look, in the top growth areas. When we're looking at separations and what the demand are for jobs, we also have healthcare in the top 5. So we could see that there's a trend with what's happening in healthcare along the way. Another thing that we like to look at when we do these studies is what we call high wage and high demand occupations. And that's important because when you think about the average annual wage for the Charleston metro region is just under $55,000 a year. And so when you think about what is a high wage, high demand job, we look at those jobs that are above that mark. So those are jobs that are going to be above that middle average range. So jobs that can provide a little bit better economic mobility. Another thing we look at is our diversity numbers too. So this shows us we did a comparison of 2014 to 2022. And our numbers are actually trending really well and pretty on spot with our demographics of the region. I will note, though, the one thing that we looked at when we were applying for the grant that we're going to be talking about today and some of the work that we're doing is that, and it's not denoted here, but it is in one of the surveys that we utilize to capture this information. Diversity within healthcare is a little bit different. The healthcare is usually segmented in two kind of sectors. One is through the support jobs, which are typically entry level, lower level jobs or lower paying jobs, and then the practitioner jobs, which are in the higher end, more technical degrees and higher pay. On the support side, we noticed that the diversity numbers had increased for healthcare pretty significantly over the years, but in the practitioner side, diversity numbers had decreased. And so that showed us there was an opportunity there, that there was definitely numbers to hit diversity numbers, but it wasn't happening at the higher wage jobs. And it wasn't for the lack of folks available to be in those jobs. So that's one thing that we really paid attention to when we were looking at this information. The next few things that are key for us are looking at shortages. The first way we look at them are just pure jobs. Where are we going to have the most jobs openings? And these are for jobs that don't require a high school that don't require an advanced degree. So anything past high school or any type of certification. The next way we looked at it are what degree shortages are we going to have for the region per the jobs that we know are coming down the pipeline. So this is helpful for our colleges and universities in the region to kind of see where we can pull what gaps there are going to be with degrees needed for jobs in the region. This slide is the most significant. So this slide shows the certification gaps that we're going to expect to see per the job ratio that we know is forecasted. And every single one of these certifications minus the secret clearance is in the healthcare area. So that really shows where the greatest need is and why we've kind of really paid attention to this industry at this time. Whenever I present this information to folks, I like to have them understand that this isn't just about the people in that industry. It's very significant to that industry, but this is also about our community. These are positions, and when you think about how you interact with your community in an everyday, if we don't have EMS workers, EMTs, if we don't have some of those nurses and folks, that affects everyone. And so we really want to have people kind of realize that, because it's easy to think, well, that's not the field where, I may work in, and so it's not as important to me, but it is important to your community. Another thing, not really important, we look at trends. So this was just showing trends coming out of COVID and where remote jobs are or not. But that really, that talent demand study really kind of shows us and can show the forecast of where we are and what significant things are really important to our region.
Thank you for that, Celeste. I think it's important to lay some context as well around, we mentioned grant, and so we haven't gotten into our full discussion today, but in the fall of last year, all of these organizations that are represented here today received one of the Good Jobs Challenge grants from the Department of Commerce. It was a part of the American Rescue Act plan. So we were able to bring resources into this community that will give us an opportunity to provide livable wage jobs. We are thinking 1,000 career pathways, and we'll get into what that means. Very specific language, is not individual actual jobs that will be created, but opportunities for individuals who may already be in the profession, as well as some new jobs, various combinations. But it's very specific to traditionally marginalized communities. So that's why we thought it was important to have this conversation with the larger community of Royal and our extended family across this region. So Felicia and Renee, I'll start with you all. Kind of in your experience, what are some of the key barriers or challenges that individuals from underrepresented communities face when trying to enter the healthcare field? And how do you think the Good Jobs Challenge will address that differently?
So I'll start, Renee. So some of the barriers that we've seen and that I've seen in my healthcare career is like the limited access to education opportunities. And so in certain areas, there's a lack of funding or a lack of resources in these marginalized communities. There's also socioeconomic disparities. So again, that will tie into the limited financial resources that are available in those particular communities. In addition to that, there would be like lack of representation or mentorship. So again, if we're talking about, as Celeste shared in her presentation, the lack of representation or the small numbers of individuals that are of color in these different healthcare fields. So it's kind of hard for somebody to aspire to be something that they don't see themselves. And so then also, there are also some implicit bias and discriminations that may appear through the application process or through some of the professional interactions and career advancement opportunities.
Yeah, and go ahead, Felicia.
No, go ahead.
I think you hit them all. I think also when we talk about those socioeconomic components, we think about things like their housing. We don't realize how many underrepresented populations have to deal with transitional housing, their lack of transportation. All those things impact when it's time to apply for employment, or that you don't have those skill sets that are placed into a job, application when you need a driver's license, or you have to show that you live in a certain area because that's a requirement of the job, or it's going to be a barrier. Those things can be deterrents, right, to thinking about entering the healthcare field as well. So we don't always think about those traditional things, which Felicia mentioned, as education, credentials, things like that, and lack of access. But those non-traditional components to why someone might not enter the healthcare sector. And then Felicia, go ahead. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
No, you're fine. This is tag teaming. So the other part that we also addressing is childcare. So that's a barrier for some individuals. So I believe your second part of the question was like how will the Good Job Challenge work towards these things? And again, it's through providing education, working with different universities and colleges in the area to come up with a training program, working with different organizations to offer a mentorship, working, and we'll talk about this later on in the presentation, but having wraparound services and working with those different providers within our Charleston Tri-County area to address these barriers that we have discussed.
So Felicia, you mentioned implicit bias. And so for our viewers tonight, can you talk more about what implicit bias is?
You would give me that question. So it's basically things that are, I think about the training that we had, and it's actually things that we don't know that we're biased, or like if you say, and I'll give an example, if you think about a Black neighborhood, and what's the first things that come to mind when you think about a Black neighborhood? And it's usually those things that may be negative as opposed to the positive things. And so when you're also talking about it in a workforce setting, again, you're basically tagging or tying something to someone's skin color or something that you know about, or you've heard about it, and it may not even be something that you've experienced with that particular group, but it's something that through media or what someone else has said that it becomes your way of thinking of things.
Thank you for that. I just like, sometimes we use terms that are very technical and people know what they are once you talk about what the examples of them are, but they don't have the tools to actually articulate what it is. So I appreciate that. So Celeste, I'm gonna throw it back to you. So those are some of the challenges. Can you talk about just what we're looking forward to in the Good Jobs Challenge and its mission, and how does it work towards promoting diversity in the healthcare field?
Yeah, I think that was one of the things that really stood out about this grant, is that it's looking at workforce, but also looking at equity. The Good Jobs Challenge was really designed to invest in developing and strengthening regional workforce training systems, but also looking at those individuals who typically maybe haven't had the opportunity to have the education or ability to move up in their careers because of either access or maybe just barriers or wraparound services that they weren't provided. So the great thing about this grant is that the money really goes, the majority of it goes directly into training programs. So being able to pay for training, certifications, supplies, and then also those critical wraparound services, like Felicia said, we're looking at childcare, we're looking at transportation, we're looking at, a few things of what could be barriers to either entering an educational program or entering a job. A lot of times too, when you think about a lot of these jobs, there is growth patterns, and there's a couple of things that happen. Either one, you don't realize what those growth patterns are. And I like to give the example, like when we were in elementary or middle school, in grade school through high school, we have guidance counselors. If you go to college, sometimes, you have career counselors there too. When you go into the workforce, there's no career counselors. You're in your job, and unless you have a good mentor that can really show you, or you really, take it upon yourself to understand that industry, you may not know exactly what those different paths are. And they're not always, what you might think. It may not be an exact linear progression. You could potentially move around, but unless you know that, it could be difficult for you to navigate that system. The other thing, when you think about those career paths too, when you are working, a lot of folks are working full time. In order to move up, if you have to get additional credentials, certifications, that's time outside of work usually too. And that's difficult in itself. And then when you have a family or anything else, or any other responsibilities, that adds on to it as well. And if you're in an entry-level job, some folks work 2 jobs to make ends meet. Charleston's expensive, and so thinking about a lot of those barriers, this grant specifically, I think, is uniquely placed to help remove those barriers and give people who traditionally probably wouldn't have those opportunities an opportunity to find more meaningful careers and trajectories and the ability to gain economic mobility.
So we've been talking a lot about the wraparound services. Felicia, can you go into more detail about what some of those wraparound services that we currently have identified and how we would implement those?
Yes, and I also was thinking about, because we do the work, we say wraparound services, but others may not know exactly what that is. So for those who don't, it's a comprehensive approach to doing work and providing individuals or families with a network of services. So as we shared with you guys before, we were looking at different barriers. So transportation being a barrier. So our work and what we're doing is basically looking at ways to provide transportation to individuals who may have issues with transportation. So working with Carter, childcare may be an issue. So maybe providing them with childcare vouchers, or seeing what services that provider may offer to their employees. We also talked about different recidivism programs that we can work with those who have prior convictions, and finding ways for them to have some sense of stability and support in their work. Also talking about working with mental health or career readiness. So working with the Department of Mental Health, or with as far as career readiness, working with Palmetto Goodwill or SC Works to assist them with that. And then again, some of the other things that we talked about is financial literacy. So providing some kind of personal financial education, wealth building, or some kind of support so that they know how to, maybe some people don't know how to budget or write a check, or just the simple things, but basically providing them with the services to wrapping services around them so that they can advance and have a stronger position than what they had before.
I think that's important to just highlight that, a lot of us walk in privilege that, if we get into a situation where we lose a job or we need to find a new job, we all have computers at home, we have printers at home, we have access to vehicles. And so the way in which we may navigate may be totally different than someone who does not have all of those tools available to them. And so when we talk about access, that's what we're trying to really break through, removing all the things that we just take for granted in our way of living that is not the same for all individuals. And so how do we create those access points? And I think the financial literacy is one of those important factors that, someone going from making, $30,000 to now making $50,000 or $60,000 is a pretty significant jump, in providing just some services to help with what does that mean for you? What are some of the opportunities that then, having that additional income may provide you, whether it be housing. And housing is not explicitly called out in this grant, but we do want everyone to recognize that we know that housing in Charleston is expensive. That too is a barrier. And so, there are conversations about partnering with other individuals through the chamber and our employers. All of them have come to the table and really talked about housing. They know how much of a challenge it is if individuals live in one part of the county or different counties and may work somewhere else, and they're still expected to get to work on time. And so the reality of that is different. So can we move into, some of the other partnerships that are part of the Low Country Career Collaborative, and any of you can jump in. How have we established those partnerships in the industry, and how do these partnerships contribute to advancing diversity, equity, inclusion?
Here, I can start, but please jump in. I think, there's a few different angles that we looked at this, right? So there's the healthcare industry as one, and Renee can speak to this better than I can, but when we looked at bringing healthcare to the table, Roper was integral, and just the work that they do in DEI alone is just really significant, and they're a standout leader in that area, which is why I think they were thought of to be a part of this program. I think too, also when we looked at healthcare in general, and a lot of the jobs and some of the larger healthcare systems, because they're just huge ecosystems in themselves, right? And they have a lot of opportunity to move around and move up. But we also wanted to make sure we were looking at other types of employers as well. So Federal Healthcare Network is a part of this as well. When we looked at our target numbers of potential participants, or folks that we wanted to have go into training programs or placed into jobs, we set a number of 1,000 participants. We also are doing specific measurements around that. So 75% of those were going to be people of color. We had set a mark of 50% female, and then 5% participants from rural areas. And so we were cognizant when we looked at those targets of also the other partners that we brought into it. I think the other piece too are the community partners. And that's a big part of it as well. E3 is instrumental for us in keeping us centered around equity. That's one of the largest pieces that they have to keep us on track. And Audrey helps keep me on track on a day-to-day. But to really think about all those community members that are also going to be significant and a part of this and provide to it. I think just keeping in mind that this is so much larger than just the healthcare industry too.
Yeah, and then when I think about from the healthcare standpoint, a lot of our connections to the other sectors is so important. We have those relationships, whether it's in supplier diversity, right? That's an avenue that we have a wealth of suppliers that we partner with or that we utilize those services. And so that's an avenue when you think about the chamber and the business sector. And then when you think about the other sectors, Roper St. Francis being the nonprofit healthcare system, but that is faith-based. We do, we're here with the Royal Foundation today. That's a strong connection in our community investment portfolio and our community health needs assessment work that we do in the Tri-County area is what I like to say is the instantaneous consultation. When we go out and we do health needs, we go out to the local community-based organizations, faith organizations, all those sectors that we talked about because we want to get a good sampling. And so that develops partnerships. And so when we come to the table as a partner in this grant and this collaborative, those partnerships and relationships come with us. And then, so that's trust that's already built as we enter the programming. And then because we already have these ready-made relationships with entities like Federal Healthcare, even with our MUSC and Trident being healthcare partners and taking care of the community, there's relationships already built there. So that's some of the benefit of the partnerships that we do have and that we have established.
So I would just like to remind our participants, if you are in the Zoom platform, please put your questions in the Q&A box. And if you are on Facebook or YouTube, someone is monitoring those and they will place your questions in the Q&A. So as we haven't seen any yet, but please start thinking about what your questions may be. So just in terms of workforce development, what steps are being taken by the organizations here to provide training, mentorship, and professional development opportunities for individuals entering the healthcare field through the collaborative?
I'll start there, if that's okay. I think for us at Roper St. Francis, the initial step was once we joined the partnership, it was to identify lead positions to make sure that we're intentional about moving the work forward. While it is a huge function of our human resources, it's what they do every day. They already had their built-in, strategies for diversity to make sure we're recruiting a diverse pool of candidates. And they have those relationships, but by hiring a career development program manager that is her charge, to help us build that upward mobility programming and to think about the needs of our internal participants from Roper St. Francis, but also how that can be leveraged for this overall collaborative. And then also attaching our diversity and inclusion and health equity work to that. And we also have a position where we have a specialist, and that's with the lens of equity. When we talk about wraparound services, the one strength that we have having community health programming is we know real time the needs that many of our underrepresented communities, their needs and what they're running into. So having that diversity specialist who is in the community has navigated many of our patients through getting the resources that many of these participants that work within the health system have the same barriers. That's key, I think, in this space, Audrey, to make sure that we apply those opportunities. And then when we talk earlier about education challenges, Roper has also been able to have those education reimbursement programs where they, reimburse or go ahead and pay upfront for those services for people looking to advance their educational training or certification. And the one thing I want to say about that is many of those programs, they have these special programs where they offer you some form of technology because you're already thinking about the barriers that many of our workers might be running into. I don't want to forget about digital equity. That is so important. That, I think, might have been one of the leading barriers as to why people do not apply for healthcare positions, because they don't know how to utilize the tools that we put in place to apply. So I think intentionally thinking about how do we go out to those community partner sites to help them with that when it's time to help with job applications when we're out in the community. That's another piece of addressing the digital access and the barriers to digital access.
So one of the things that I think would be important as another element of this work is the creation of the Equity Council and the function of the Equity Council. So Felicia, I'm going to ask you to talk about like what the Equity Council is and who's, on that council as an element of this work.
Okay, I'm happy you brought that up because I was going to tag on to what Renee just shared. So the Equity Council is a group of community members. Some represent organizations, but it's individuals that from the healthcare industry to community organizations to faith-based organizations. And basically, they're at the table to hold us accountable as far as equity. So that's what E3 does, but they're also making sure that we are they're the voice of the community, I'll say. So they're the voice of the community, providing us with input, being our thought partners as we discuss different things about the grant and how we roll it out. So from recruitment to access, those are different things. Even our branding, like, they'll have input on those things, but just working with us collectively, because sometimes when you sit in a room and you're in an administrative position, you think and then someone else will come in and say, well, have you guys considered? And so our Equity Council is basically there to help us think about things that we may not have thought about among the three organizations that are working together. So our Equity Council consists of individuals from the school district. We have representation from ECPI and Trident Tech. Like I said, faith-based organizations. So there's a representative from Royal Baptist Church that's serving on it, as well as other denominations. We also have representation from our Hispanic and Latino communities. So we have the Hispanic Association, and we also have someone from New Digital Press that's also serving on our committee. And so we also have and this is something that I thought about, we think about when we're talking about work, we are always thinking about like color. When we say diversity, but diversity goes way deeper than your skin color. And so also being inclusive of those who have disabilities. So we also have Able SC that's serving on our committee. And so again, we have a host of different organizations, and we're always thinking about who's still missing at the table, right? So if your organization, if it's someone that we may not have mentioned, please share that with us.
I appreciate that. So we do have one question from Ms. Deborah Hamilton. She asked, what is the criteria for a person to get access to these resources? Good question, Ms. Hamilton.
I can start off. So in terms of this grant specifically and kind of the guidance that they've given us, it's basically anybody who has barrier to employment and or employment gain. The thing that we're going to be defining very soon is we have our employers working together, looking at their critical jobs. We had identified some originally in the grant, but we wanted to go back from the time because, by the time we put our application in, a lot of time had gone past until they awarded it. And we wanted to make sure that the jobs that we're looking at are true to the jobs and the needs, and that they're the highest needs within the area. The other thing we wanted to look at too is that these jobs had economic mobility, right? So if there's no barrier for someone to be able to move forward, then they probably wouldn't be applicable. But really, that's one of just the main biggest piece to this, and looking to move up within the healthcare industry and looking at the specific programs that we're going to be pushing forward and providing funding towards.
Thank you for that, Celeste. So Felicia, how does the E3's partnership and workforce development team collaborate with other organizations and stakeholders to drive diversity, equity, inclusion efforts. Can you provide some examples of successful partnerships and their impact?
Sure. So the E3 Foundation stands for Educate, Empower, and Elevate. And so we're a community-based organization. And our mission is to work with those most impacted by inequities. So that's our Black and Brown individuals. And so when we start thinking about different partnerships and so forth that we have, we work with different organizations that align with our mission, vision, and values. So a lot of the community-based organizations, we work with faith-based organizations and educational institutions. So a lot of our work, let me back up. E3's primary role, like when they were founded, was around education. And so doing healthcare is something very new to the organization. So a lot of the work that's done is in the education system. Like I said, working with the different school districts, and collaborating with them with like in things as far as like the curriculum development. We do things with industry leaders around professional development or leadership coaching. And we also do strategic planning as well as community engagement. And we also look at other industries outside of the education system to create a talent pipeline. So that's something that we're also looking at, because typically with individuals, and this is a conversation that we recently had, like we think, okay, well, we'll recruit people like, oh, they figure out what they want to do when they're younger, right? So the whole idea is to expose youth to different fields as early as K-5 so that they know like what path they should take along the way. And so that's something that we continue to work with different with different institutions in our community.
So looking forward, Celeste, what are your aspirations and future goals for the collaborative and the organization's involvement in promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion?
Or with this program specifically, I mean, I think, you know, we've been given a great opportunity with this grant to create this regional workforce training system that focuses on all the things that we talked about. What I'm really looking forward to, and also, you know, have to put in some work is making sure there's sustainability around this. You know, we've been given this funding to create something. And so, you know, taking the time and being responsible with how we set it forward so that we can create the sustainable program that lasts beyond, and we can keep it going within the healthcare. We also hope to look at other industries as well. You know, healthcare was the first one, and there were so many different aspects to healthcare, right? There was the job piece, there was what Felicia talked about earlier, representation, and just access in general. And if we could open that up, you know, healthcare seemed the right fit to start this initiative. But our goal and you know, long-term, you know, big dreams is, you know, can we look at every industry and do the same sort of thing, and really look at, you know, folks who traditionally haven't, you know, have been overlooked, or you know, we have great partnerships with our four-year institutions. They have a great purpose. There's jobs that are needed within that, but there are plenty of jobs in the Charleston region that don't require a four-year degree. There's really good paying jobs, and there are, you know, pipelines that can go directly into that. And I think it's about, you know, exposing individuals to, just like you were saying with those pipelines, of what's available, the understanding of it, and showing a path forward for folks. Because if you can't see yourself moving forward in a career, it's really hard to even start in that career, right? If you can't see your next steps or where you're going to go or how you're going to advance or make a life, you know, out of it, it's hard to even take that first step. So I think for us is really looking at ways to provide economic mobility for the region, making sure that we're looking at, you know, those high wage jobs that are maybe not, you know, as you know, high in education attainment needed to fill those. And I think along with that too, a lot of the initiatives with the chamber, looking at housing attainability, looking at the other things, we have a vested interest in childcare as well. And so there's different aspects of the chamber too. And we also look at policies within our region and state. And so there are things that we're doing kind of in tangent with some of these initiatives to help support and make things easier. Some of them being, we just were able to push through occupational licensing policy to prevent folks from not being able to obtain or reobtain a license because of a criminal involvement, or unless it was directly related to the license that you're seeking reapplication for, but reducing barriers to make it easier to work within the region as well.
So I know, Celeste, that you all are doing a lot of work around minority businesses and being able to meet some of the demand in our region, because we know that some of wealth building is around just being able to create your own revenue streams. So as a part of this grant, it is federal funds, but will there be opportunities for individuals if they can provide one of those wraparound services? Would they be able to apply to be a vendor to provide these services? And what does that look like?
Yeah, absolutely. As we start to develop this out, and Felicia's helping out a lot with the wraparound services and kind of mapping what that looks like for us. We'll have the ability to fund and bring in providers who can help with the barriers that we're looking at. And so we're definitely encouraging, it depends on how we go after those. A lot of them, we'll probably have to put out bids, and we'll definitely utilize ways of how we can make sure that that's known, and looking at, minority businesses, women-owned businesses, local businesses. Those are high priority for us as we look to utilize this funding as we move forward. And our DE&I team does a fantastic job. They bring so much forward, for diversity and minorities in our area, whether it is, our minority business accelerator. We have our diversity leader certificate. I mean, I could name so many things. They do a great DE&I conference that's coming up in a month, but there's so many opportunities, and we try to look at ways to find that synergy too. So as we work, we really try and think about how we can, and we really utilize each other a lot as we kind of work together through a lot of these initiatives.
So if you have a business and it could be in one of those categories that Felicia mentioned earlier as a wraparound service provider, there may be opportunities that you could be a part of this phenomenal program, and that, we'll, have definitely been thinking about how do we even break down that access and barriers to, because it's a process to become a federal service provider or vendor. It's not that you can just show up and say, I know how to drive vans and I've been doing it in Charleston, but if you don't have the correct credentials, then we can't provide, you can't be a part of the service provider listing for this grant. So that too is a barrier that we're definitely trying to look at as well. So thank you for that, Celeste.
If I can plug one more thing too that I think is
absolutely
really helpful. So our VP of diversity is Richard Waring, and he does a really good job with the programming that he does. He also has been trying to update our minority business directory. And that's something that we really utilize. When I look for businesses or folks, I always ask him first, who's in our minority business directory? When we have people ask us for recommendations, those are the first place most of us go to look to tap in is that minority business directory. And so if you do have a business, I would say, please, contact him, plug in. You can find it on our website. He's been trying to clean that up and make sure it's accurate. It's usually, county level, you can find that information, but not all counties keep it up to date. So we're trying to make it as up to date as possible and kind of have our own listing of it.
So if you have a business and you are in a qualify as a minority business, then make sure that you connect with the chamber, Richard Waring, and tell him that Celeste said you could contact him. But Richard is good people, and make sure you're listed in that directory so that people will have access. Because a lot of times people also just contact the chamber when they don't know where to find minority businesses. So if you're in that listing, you may get a direct plug, as we would say. So we have 3 questions. So I'm going to go with the first one. I am a 19-year-old and have taken no college level courses. Is there a health career counselor who can help me map out a plan? Whom should I contact and what all would they do? So Renee, I'm going to ask you to jump on that one.
Yeah, so with us, like we said, we're developing the program, getting those internal pieces together. But I think if my information is even provided until we get that fully up and operational, that's what we do at Roper St. Francis in our diversity work. We try to help people shadow, go through a program, see what's available. We also just even started internally people that are non-clinical within Roper St. Francis. Giving them the opportunity when they become employees to be a part of an apprenticeship program so they become certified medical assistants. So there's upward mobility that we build in, but when it comes to just sharing about healthcare and the work that you can get into, we have diversity specialists that can help with that right now to make sure that my contact information is available. We have no issues reaching out to you and working with you and helping you map out that plan or understanding what are your options within the healthcare space. We are more than open to doing that.
Thank you for that, Renee. So Miss Cleo and Miss Suzanne, if you will make sure we get that person's contact information, we can get them connected with Renee. So the next question is similar. How can I refer people to this program? Is it for healthcare jobs only? So Celeste, you want to talk to that?
Sure. When we do roll out the application and interest forms, I'm sure Audrey will help us get it into everyone here and into the community. We're going to look at different approaches of getting it into community. Right now, it is only healthcare for this grant specifically, but as we look to keep this kind of work going, we want to try and expand to different areas as well. But right now, it's just focused on healthcare.
So, next question, will seniors seeking employment and education be included?
Yeah, this opportunity is pretty wide open. It's, as long as you're seeking full-time employment at the end of this, then you are, eligible. So, the parameters of what the EDA is considering good jobs is a full-time job with benefits that is at or above prevailing wages. Prevailing wages mean that it is comparable, equal to the average salary of that job within a region. So those are the type of jobs that we are hoping to place people in. So if you are a senior and looking to go into a full-time work, yeah, you potentially have a place within here.
Nice. Are there career mentoring opportunities for people seeking to move into upper management and hospital administration, Renee?
Yeah, so for internally with Roper, and then something that we could definitely build into the programming as we develop this collaborative work, we have something we call emerging leaders. And that is something that we've built into those who might be in that administrative space or any non-clinical, clinical role, and they want to move into the managerial space. We have a program built around that. So I think that's to come as we think about wraparound services. mentoring is definitely a big opportunity for participants when they enroll in this program.
And I just want to add that we are also looking to add like different professional groups. So like the National Association for Health Services Executives has like mentoring opportunities. There's also the South Carolina Hospitals Alliance Association, that's also serving on our Equity Council. And so again, there are opportunities where if they're not housed here in Charleston, like my mentor is in Columbia, but is in healthcare administration. And so there will be opportunities where you can be paired with someone to help guide you through whatever track that you're on.
So this is from Ty Armstrong. Thank you, Ty, for your question. I'm 24 years old, potentially going back to school for nursing. What programs or scholarships could I apply for that would help me get into the healthcare field, specifically MUSC or Trident Tech? Ms. Renee.
Yeah. So, and so I think that's the other part, because like on our Equity Council, we have those schools that offer those services at the table. They each individually have their special programming, particularly sometimes targeted at our, underrepresented communities, our minority communities, special programs specifically for nursing. So if that's your interest, as Felicia said, is connecting you with the right individuals who, work within those institutions to help you approach what's going to be the best option for you based upon your particular situation. So that makes me really want to call out the fact that for us, when we identify the positions that we have to help with navigating the services, it's an individual navigation. It's not a one size fit all. Because everyone has special circumstances. And that's why we want to be intentional about offering that level of service to participants when they come into the program. So just know we have the connections there, and we'll get you seated with the proper individuals based upon what your plan of action is based on your upward mobility pathway.
So Ty, please make sure we have your contact information so we can connect with you. I will tell you that I was at Trident Tech 2 weeks ago, just getting a tour of facilities. Nursing programs was one of them. I will say we cannot sleep on what Trident Tech is doing in our community around preparing professionals for higher wage jobs. They really are doing some when we talk about access and opportunity and looking at an equity focus, tuition is free through 2024. So, they have a program that will provide a nursing degree. And then they also have connections with our 4-year institutions where if you want to get a BSN, they can help you in that pathway at a very reduced cost. And so just taking advantage of those programs. And so making sure we have your information so we can get you in the right, get you connected to the right people. But Trident Tech is a doable option in our community. And they are really doing the hard work of making it accessible for individuals for these higher paying jobs, especially in healthcare. All right, so we have several other questions. I think we answered this. Is this clinical only?
Go ahead, Renee.
Oh, yes. So we see, so based upon the programming, as Celeste said, we're looking at what are those top pathways or career paths that we're looking at. And so as we bring the collective together with the other healthcare partners, we want to identify those positions that would be best suited for us all to kind of focus on. And so I think, Celeste, we had one position that was less of a non-clinical, more on the health administration side of it. That one might be one that comes into play. EMS might have been one of them that came about, nursing, of course. So I think after we kind of take a look at what we have to offer and we identify what are those common positions, that would really shape it. But there was, one that was non-clinical, so to speak. It was more on the administration side of it.
Did you want to add anything, Celeste?
No, Renee
Okay.
said it.
Okay, perfect. All right. As far as mental health services, are those available as well?
So that's an area we're exploring. It's a little tricky because there is two things that we really wish were included in this grant. One was housing, and we talked about that earlier, but it just wasn't a part of it. The other piece is healthcare, and so it's tricky on how you bring it forward, because a lot of times that sometimes falls into the healthcare arena. And so it's something we're exploring, but I don't have a full answer yet. We've been working with the EDA and other folks on, how we can do something towards mental health, because that can be a barrier. We see it all the time. That can be a barrier to education and or employment. So it's an area that we hope we can make effort in, but I don't have an answer as if we will be able to for sure, how it would look like if we could.
And just to add, as we're doing our analysis of different services that are provided by each provider or each employer, some organizations do provide some type of mental health or EAP for their employees where they can seek those mental health services. So it would depend on the organization that you would be employed with.
Mhm.
So Renee, I believe this question is asking, would former Roper employees potentially be eligible?
Well, I think, yeah, while our target is, really our internal employees for the implementation of an upward mobility programming for the whole comprehensive collaborative, I don't think there's anything to rule it out. Of course, you're
No.
eligible if you're coming in from the community and you happen to be a former Roper employee. You still have the opportunity to be a part of this collaborative and get that upward mobility track and the services that is offered to a participant. And we'd want your information as well too.
Yes. So put anonymous, whoever that person was, Miss Cleo, who asked about the former Roper employee, please let us have your information. This question, I'm unsure if this is related or not, but hearing of the apprenticeship program at Roper St. Francis is encouraging towards succession planning. There are a few healthcare organizations that struggle with succession planning. Does the chamber offer a service or model organizations may take advantage of?
I can start, but then Renee, maybe, from the Roper St. Francis side, if you want to pick up. There are a few things we do. One of the things that we do, not necessarily just for individual businesses, but it's what we're doing right now with our employers in healthcare, is it's called talent pipeline management. And it really helps you look at the succession planning of your business. Because when we are looking at specific jobs, what we're actually doing right now, and we've alluded to this, that we said, we're bringing these employers together and having them look at this. I'm actually taking and surveying them and pulling their true numbers. And we're looking at, what are the true numbers here? Are they because people are leaving? Are they because of new jobs? So that we can look to see if this is a retention issue, to see if we have a good pipeline set up. And our goal with this is to create pathways that can naturally lead folks, through their career and progression, because that's important. One, it's important for the individual to be able to continue and progress along their career path, and for the industry itself to be able to show those career paths. The other unique thing with healthcare, and why it's unique and different, is that it's almost, and as we've thought about this, it's kind of like a spider web, right? Like, you can start in one area, but you don't have to stay within that area. Like, you could start maybe in imaging, but still potentially go to the nursing track, if you find that that's not where you want to be. So part of this too is the education of how you can progress, and then having employers understand, what are my true needs so I can account for it, understand what those are. And then we're also working on the side of education and training providers to see what their true capacities are. We know that we're having a huge shortages in RNs. This may not be a job that we look at with this grant specifically because of the short time frame of the grant, but it's something that we're going to work on no matter what because of the high needs of it, and we need to think about that progression into it, right, and how it's hitting this community. So regardless, we want to pull those numbers anyway, and so when we look at our training providers, we're going to see, you know, who all offers these paths, how many seats are there, are people graduating, are they not, is it because of a barrier, you know, to graduation, are they leaving the region in general? And so being able to figure out, you know, where those holes are and where those gaps are, so that we can help make some sense out of them and figure out how to fix it. I hope that answers that in accordance with succession planning. And I don't know, Renee, if you wanted to add anything specifically about Roper.
Yeah. And so you said that's encouraging. And so succession planning is something, you know, we try to build in, but it is because of the fact that our strategy is to make sure that we recruit and promote and retain a workforce that represents our community. You know, that's one of the big pieces to making sure that you're providing that quality care, right? And that you're thinking through that lens of equity. And so if that's our goal, we want to be able to attract top talent and keep them. Right. And so that succession planning is intentional. But I think the opportunity being a part of this collaborative and being the backbone organization is that we're able to, what I like to, you know, say is the plan, you do the work, you check it, and then you act on it. And I think this gives us an opportunity to plan what succession could look like in healthcare for our collaborative partners that we mentioned earlier that are part of this work and a part of our Equity Council, and be able to replicate that. There's no sense in reinventing the wheel if someone has the special sauce, right, to get things done, that we can share that and be collaborative and share that information and have that constant communication with our other healthcare partners in the region.
So I think there are several things that we talked about this evening. We talked about the participants being able to be involved in this program. There's also an opportunity for vendors, if you are able to provide or already have an established business that's providing wraparound services, whether it be transportation, childcare, financial literacy, other things that you know that people may need. There's an opportunity there for you as well. And in that respect, you have to be certified, you know, to be able to receive federal funds, and that's a process. So we are definitely, you know, investigating how we can prepare more folks to be a part of that process. And so I know what's on most people's minds is when is, you know, where are the applications? How can I apply? Where do I get more information? So I'm going to come back to you all and ask each of you to kind of talk about, well, Celeste, if you can talk about kind of what the vision is for the fall. We really wanted to bring this information to you all now, so that when things start really becoming public, and that you'll be ready and you can respond. So there are things that you could be doing right now to prepare yourself. So I know there have been a couple of questions about how do I stay in contact for upcoming information? Is there a mailing list with updates? So I'm going to very slowly give you our email address and ask that all the participants who had specific questions, we ask for your information. But if you just want to stay abreast of what is happening, I'm going to provide E3's general email address. And if you would put in the subject line, webinar participant, or saw you on, you know, the YouTube live, whatever however we'll figure it out, but ask us what your question is or provide us your contact information. We can add you to our distribution list and continue to as a part of the collaborative. So that email address is info, INFO at the E3, so another E, the number 3, group, GROUP.com. So that's info, INFO at the another E3 group, GROUP, all one word, .com. You can find us on Facebook at Educate 843. You can find us on LinkedIn as E3. You can find us on Instagram as the E3 group. So any of those ways, we will make sure that you stay abreast of what is happening. It is important to all of us here that we maintain the lines of communication bi-directional. I heard this term earlier today. So you provide us feedback, and that informs our processes, and we are also going to be pushing out information. So Celeste, can you talk about kind of what you're envisioning for like the official rollout of, in this instance, participants?
Sure. We're looking at a large, broad scale, probably release toward it in mid to late fall. We're kind of taking our time and softly rolling out the very initial pieces, but also utilizing, a communication marketing firm who also has brought on another equity firm that looks at healthcare equity a lot and other aspects, and utilizing our equity council so that as we do this, we want to set it up right, and have it really be something that can last over time. So we'll probably have a softer, start with some of our employers who potentially already have folks in the pipeline, to kind of understand and see if we're really tracking this correctly, and then having a larger, broader release with the ability to have interest forms and things like that in about mid fall.
So you heard it here first. So if get your stuff together, start working on your resume, start preparing yourself, putting it into the atmosphere that you're going to be one of these participants, and get your mind ready to get to work. And we are excited about all that will be brought as a result of this endeavor to our community. We all believe wholeheartedly that this could be a game changer, because we all have seen just all the ways in which individuals from marginalized communities are sometimes just pushed out of the process and don't even get a chance to participate. So it's just important to all of us, and we're all committed. And I would say that we all, hold us all accountable to ensuring that we do this the way that we think we know that it needs to be done. And we're also learning as we move through it that we don't want it to just be another, process where we say one thing, but we're doing something different. We really want this to be transformational for our community. Economically in our community, we know that communities of color already have multiple barriers stacked up against them. It is very expensive to live in Charleston. So one of the things that we've, really been challenging ourselves around is, when you talk about entry-level healthcare roles, whether it's a CNA or something like that, and those roles average around, anywhere between $35,000 to $40,000 a year. You can't live in the Charleston community anymore. That will be, could be rent alone. Not to mention, being able to purchase a home and be able to take care of your family, childcare, transportation, all of those things. That wage is just not able to suffice anymore. And so that was what was attractive to all of us here about this work, is that we think we can make a difference. So we don't have any more questions, but I will just go around for closing comments from everybody. And I'll start with you, Renee.
Yeah, I think for me, it's growing up here as you heard, in the greater Charleston area. All these opportunities were not there. And so it's a personal mission of mine to make sure that I help others lift others as you climb, is a common term that I hear often. And so that's important. And so I encourage you all to stay connected to this opportunity. As I said, for the one individual who said they wanted some guidance on kind of the next steps, that's what we're here for as healthcare professionals in the Tri-County region, and look forward to seeing you all in the fall.
All right, Felicia.
So similar to what Renee said, being from Charleston, and what Audrey shared in my bio is that I worked in COVID. So this work is very important to me simply because in doing the COVID work, I saw the lack of diversity. As we were trying to administer vaccines and doing testing. And so I wholeheartedly believe that an organization or a sector should be reflective of the people that they're serving. And so this initiative allows us to diversify the healthcare workforce so that when people show up to their doctor's appointment or wherever they're, to the radiology, wherever they're going, that they see someone that looks like them. It brings another level of comfort and trust in the institution. When you can see someone that looks like you, that person can explain things on another level that someone else may not. And so I also encourage you guys to share the information with your loved ones. And for those who are interested in positions, please stay in touch. For that person who also said that they were interested in healthcare administration, I'm open to being someone's mentor. So while I'm not in the healthcare system or in public health, I'm a healthcare girl all day. And so I'm open to assisting you along this journey.
All right, Celeste.
I just want to thank everyone again for this opportunity to be here and share this information with all of these lovely ladies. And again, too, at the chamber, chambers, usually people think, they're the business voice, but the one thing about our chamber is that we really put the region first. And so I've been fortunate to be able to look at workforce and education in our region. And for me, just the importance of being able to really lift up individuals and focus on economic mobility. It's just imperative for our region. It's imperative for individuals to be able to live their lives comfortably and have that progression. And just, in Charleston, it's difficult. And so, my challenge to industries and to businesses is to not forget that, to be able to look at, who we have here in the region. We have a wonderful region, and we have a lot of talented individuals, and being able to connect, skill sets with careers and have those careers be just ones that, can lift people up out of, lower wages and into a position where we're not struggling every day here in the Charleston area, I think is really important, and really keeping focused on that. And so really thankful for this opportunity, the opportunity that this grant's given us to try and really put that forward, and hopefully we can make some noise with it and start something good.
I appreciate that, all of you all. Jessica Holmes has a question. She said, could you all please send a synopsis of this webinar or somehow an overview of everything discussed on today, of all of this information? It's so much to jot down. If someone could email to provide some communication in some form. And then also, Renee, are you still a part of the Access Health Network with Roper? She works for ECHO, serving the community. And if not, who is now charging that with Roper Specialty Referral Services, as Access Health also helps those in the community. So I'll answer the first part of the question, and then I'll turn it over to you, Renee. This webinar will be available on the Royal Foundation's page at the recording, as well as Royal Missionary Baptist Church Facebook page. As we get more information that is actually able to be distributed, we will make sure that it comes through the community channels that Royal utilizes, but it also, if you follow any of our individual organizations, Facebook pages or socials, you'll be able to find the information, Jessica. But again, if you will email info at the e3group.com, THEE, another E3 group.com. We will make sure that you are added to our distribution list and you'll hear about things firsthand. So that's the email address that you can use. So Renee.
Yeah. And yes, ma'am, I'm still a part of the Access Health. Actually, it's one of the programs under community health, but the actual program director in charge of that program is now Rashima McKelvey. And she reports to me and then has that full team that helps with the specialty referrals out in the community. So as you can see, the community connections are there. We're ready, and we're willing, and just excited about being able to move this forward with your support.
Absolutely. So thank you, Jessica. Thank you for all of our participants tonight. Thank you for all of those who ask great questions. I'm glad that there's excitement. We knew that there was a need, but this was just confirmation that people are ready for this type of transformational work. So we're excited. We look forward to coming back maybe later, Ms. Cleo, but don't give us a month because Ms. Cleo will put us to work. We'll come back. We'll let you know, Ms. Cleo. But it's been awesome to be here with all of you tonight. I will just say that we are continuing to make progress. We're excited about the work. We appreciate the partnerships and the leadership at both the Chamber, Metro Chamber of Commerce, as well as Roper St. Francis Healthcare. Their leaders are in the room when we're talking about this work. So this is not something that is at the grass roots of their organizations. We're talking with our board members, we're talking with our CEOs and our senior leadership teams. And so everyone is on board to really make something special happen for our community of individuals of color. So thank you for this opportunity, Royal Missionary Baptist Church, our pastor, Reverend Dr. Isaac Holt, and Ms. Cleo and Ms. Suzanne from the Royal Foundation. Thank you all so much and have a good night.